Hello. Today we will present the topic caffeine. I will present the general information, then Robin will talk about the effects on the body. Leah will talk about overdose, and finally Amanda tells you what happens in the brain. So, we know caffeine mostly from coffee. The FDA says about 80% of the US take some form of caffeine every day. The most drink a coffee in the morning or afternoon, but for example, it's also in energy drinks or black tea. Well, it helps you to stay awake, but is that all? No. Caffeine is a central nervous system stimulant that affects your body in many other ways. It's tasteless, so maybe sometimes you don't even know it's in your food. It helps you to stay awake and you may feel more energetic, but there can also be withdrawal symptoms. When you consume the same amount every day, your body develops a tolerance to it. If you don't want a high amount of caffeine taken, it's better to decrease your consumption slowly. For that, it's important to read labels because in a standard size cup can be different amounts of caffeine according to the individual cafes.
Well, of course, caffeine has got some effects on your body. The most common is that you feel more awake and less tired. Of course, taking caffeine can also have other side effects, like, for example, headaches. This is connected to caffeine withdrawal. If you take a much amount of caffeine every day, the blood vessels in your brain become used to caffeine's effects, so it can cause a headache if you suddenly stop consuming it. Further symptoms of caffeine withdrawal include, for example, anxiety or drowsiness. Because of the caffeine, the amount of the acid in your stomach gets increased, which may lead to heartburn or upset stomach. You should definitely talk to your doctor and ask if it's okay for you to have caffeine if you experience stomach problems like acid reflux or ulcers. Your blood pressure can also go up for a short time if you consume caffeine. This effect is mostly because of the increase of adrenaline. Generally, there are no long-term effects on blood pressure, but caffeine may make your heart work harder if you already got irregular heart rhythms. Caffeine overdose can also result in death due to convulsions or irregular heartbeat, but this is very rare.
Caffeine isn't a real drug, but you can still have an overdose of caffeine. If you have one, you have symptoms like fever, dizziness, or a headache, but there's still more. However, you can also have other symptoms like trouble breathing, irregular and fast heart beating, or hallucinations. You can get an overdoses because maybe you drank too much coffee, soda, or tea. And all of this is a big amount of caffeine. Now I want to tell you the maximum amount you can take. So as an adult, you can take up to 400 milligram per day, but as a pregnant woman, it's just 200 milligram because the caffeine could be bad for the baby. When you breastfeed your baby, you shouldn't take too much caffeine because your baby could suffer and get some mild symptoms. And as a teenager, you can take up to 100 milligram, otherwise you will damage your health. So I think that's all you should know about an overdose of caffeine.
Of course, everybody knows that caffeine makes you awake if you are tired and sleepy. And I'm going to explain how that works. It's all to do with the neurosine. Adenosine is an inhibitory neurotransmitter, and so when it binds to receptors in the brain, it reduces nerve activity and makes you sleepy. To the receptors in the brain, caffeine looks like the adenosine, and so it can bind to the receptors too. But it doesn't reduce nerve activity, it just stops adenosine binding. The neurons aren't inhibited, they just speed up, which stops you feeling tired, instead makes you more awake. So there you go. The next time you want to drink a coffee to give you that kick, you know how it affects your brain. If you have any questions, you can just email us.